It's time to get nerdy, y'all.
A little bit of gaming history for you.
Something relevant in gaming and discuss our opinions on it.
Should we kick it out of here, or should we kick-start it?
This is the part where you, the listeners, try to stump the hosts.
I'm not a lawyer. I just play one on a podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, lads and lasses of all ages, welcome to the show. It's Tuesday, November 21st, 2023, and it is time to get nerdy. Welcome to episode 289 of Two Nerds in a Pod, the nerdiest gaming podcast in the multiverse. I am Maction, and I am joined by my good friend, my comrade in video gaming, Mr. Lam Galuka, also known as Mr. Nice Guy 425. And for the next hour, we are going to cover topics all about video gaming, ranging everywhere from news to history to legalese and everything in between. But first, Mr. Nice Guy, we weren't able to get together last week on Tuesday, though we did that bonus episode on a Saturday. How have you been since we saw each other last?
You know what, man? I have no complaints at all. Life is good. It's a good week. A lot to be thankful for. Good food, good family. So much good stuff going on. And I have the week off. I took the week off work. So I've been catching up on some stuff around the house, catching up on some video games. We'll talk about that later. I hope we don't take this year for granted in gaming. This year has just been unreal, both in terms of AAA titles, but also in terms of indies. And then in terms of indies that you and I have been blessed with the ability to play. So I'm doing great, man. Long-winded answer. I'm doing fantastic. How are you, man? What are you doing for Thanksgiving? Anything interesting?
Doing great. I am doing something interesting for Thanksgiving. It so happens that a dear friend of mine that I've known for years is out here on the coast visiting his folks. And so we're all doing Thanksgiving dinner together in a couple days, which is going to be great. But I also had a really fun thing happen this last week.
Ooh, what is it?
We couldn't meet and do our usual because on Tuesday I was visiting family up on the family farm. And in order to get there, I, took transit, buses, trains. The train is so much fun. If you haven't taken a train before, you owe it to yourself for a whole host of reasons. But on my way back, I took the train back, and on my way back, there was a person that I was like, this guy just seems like he might be cool. I felt like maybe there was a vibe. And so I was like, hey, we're both in the dining car. And I'm just like, hey, let's sit down, let's chat. And so he joins me. Turns out he's like a chemist. So we had some chemistry talk to talk about.
Nice.
He taught me a bunch of stuff about petrochemicals. I had some things to offer about water. It was fun back and forth. We wind up getting around to the thing that he's like, oh, I play Dungeons & Dragons. I'm like, this is cool. But then the most singular awesome thing happens when I'm just like, my favorite TRPG. I'm like, but I'll tell you, but nobody's heard of it. Nobody except for me and a few other people play it. GURPS. And he just like lights up. It's just like, I was raised on GURPS, man.
Nice.
And the only people I've ever met in this world who play GURPS are the people that like I have specifically inducted into the system. So to find another person in the wild who plays it, enjoys it, and was going to go visit his own family for Thanksgiving and play GURPS with his family. Yeah, I mean, just wild. So anyway, I just feel like it's one of those things where, like, I would have never met an interesting person if I had driven there, but also, riding with somebody else is kind of like, hey, a lot of us have a lot more in common that we might think, and also video games. Everybody plays video games, obviously.
It's kind of like, remember when it used to be actually like a bad thing to be a nerd? When it was like, shut up, nerd. It was like it was like 80 movies villains just like beating up on people who like video games and like comics. And nerds were not what they are today. Nerds were like pocket protector, like tape on the glasses. Now everyone's a nerd.
The thing of it is that it's like, it used to be only okay to be passionate about sports, and that was about it. now it is okay to be a nerd, to truly embrace and be passionate about so many things. And you know what? I love this world that we've created. Age of the Geek, baby.
That is right. Well, dude, my Thanksgiving is going to be very, very chill, which I love. It has been a while since I've had a chill Thanksgiving. And when I say chill, I mean me smoking meat. Gonna do a turkey and a ham. And just a ridiculous amount of good sides. And this is going to make some of the people at home laugh or smile. I don't know. We do at least 5 pies every year. And so it's just a great day of good food and relaxation. We're not hosting anyone this year. It's just going to be me and the wife and the kids. And it's just going to be a great day of gluttony and end of giving thanks for things we have. Now, Mac, I feel like every year I ask you this question. And so I know the answer in terms of what is your favorite Thanksgiving food. And if I'm not mistaken, it is sweet potato pie, correct?
I do love sweet potato pie.
Okay, but is that your favorite? Because I seem to remember asking last year, and that's your favorite Thanksgiving food.
Yeah, I'd say... No, I'd say it is my favorite Thanksgiving food because, like, you know, there are some foods that you can kind of get anytime. Leftover turkey sandwiches are awesome, but that's not a Thanksgiving food. That's a day after Thanksgiving food.
Okay, but that was going to be my
but-
question for you because I can't just ask you the same question every Thanksgiving. I got to know, in terms of non-desserts, because sweet potato pie is phenomenal, but it is a dessert. In terms of, like, maybe you could go sides, you could go meats. And chat, this is a question for you two. What is your favorite Thanksgiving non-dessert food? I had to be very specific this year. I'd love to hear.
Just classic turkey, man. I love turkey, a little bit of gravy as well. Yeah, just regular, straightforward, old, conventional Thanksgiving fare.
Okay. So my son said turkey in his class the other day, and everyone looked at him like he was crazy, including the teacher. A lot of people don't like turkey, which I feel like if you don't like turkey, you're just not doing it right. It's very, very easy to mess up a turkey. This is not a cooking podcast, but I've had a lot of turkeys.
Too dry.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And I don't understand how you dry out such a big piece of meat, but it happens so frequently. You can inject it. You can slow cook it. You can cook it in its own juices. I don't understand how turkey gets dry. That's just me. Mac, in terms of my favorite Thanksgiving food before we get to the video games, I get, you know, if I was going to go like common food, I would go sweet potatoes, candied yams, right? I love me some candied yams with pecans on top, nice and sweet with some brown sugar. Phenomenal. But I want the world to know about the goodness that is cranberry sauce. And this is a PSA for all the people at home who don't understand how delicious it is. It's not just a garnish. You can put it on turkey. You can put it on turkey sandwiches day after. But you can also just eat that stuff. It is so good. And I don't have time to tell the story about how I ate it at a company thing several years ago and some guy was looking at me like I was the weirdest person on the planet. But cranberry sauce is a straight up side. It's not just a garnish. It's delicious. And Mac, on that note, I say we do what we do best and hop right up in that gaming news, my friend. What do you think about that?
I think that is awesome. Let's do it. What is new in video gaming?
Well, you know what, Mac? There's a lot that's new in video gaming. And this is November 21st, 2023, episode 289. Thank you for tuning in, everybody. Mac, the thing about Black Friday week, Thanksgiving week, is there's not a lot of gaming news. There's a lot of Black Friday sales going on. And I would encourage everyone to follow Wario64 if you're looking for deals. I'm excited because the Steam Autumn Sale just started today. So want to make sure our listeners are aware of that. Please check your Steam wish list if there's games you're looking for. Know that there's a lot of really good stuff on sale. I'm looking at Dave the Diver and Diablo 4, potentially this week. Both are on sale for good deals. But Mac, the thing I want to talk to you about, we're going to have a non-news conversation today. And we're going to talk about some of the things we're grateful for in gaming. And I'd love to hear from the chat, because many of us are 30-somethings who grew up in the NES era. Back when you played games at your friend's house to test them out, you know, you went to the store with your mom while she was buying you sweaters or socks or underwear when you were very, very young, and you tested out the NES games on that NES display in the store. We didn't have the internet. We didn't have online multiplayer. We didn't have reviews of games. You know, we had a Nintendo hotline that you could call. My point is gaming has come a long, long way. from that 8-bit era, which I still have nostalgia for. Mac, what things are you grateful for in gaming? Common, retro, modern, whatever. I'd love to hear about it. And from chat, you as well.
You know, one of the things that I think I'm most grateful for in gaming that we have right now is honestly the crowdfunding model of games. I think particularly because I feel like when I crowdfund a video game, I often get much more direct input in the way that the game takes shape. Now, that's not true of everything, but it has been true a few times. And I feel like the less, the less mystery behind the game making process, the better. The more that we can see how the sausage gets made, essentially, the more we can appreciate the time, effort, and energy that goes into the entertainment that we love so much. And so yeah, I that's something I would say I'm grateful for that I like.
Nice. And what I will say is I am grateful for the diversity of games that exists. And let me explain what I mean by that. Back in the day, there were on NES or SNES or whatever, there were different genres of games. But it was a lot of platforming. It was a lot of beat 'em ups. The RPG element that existed in games back then was not nearly as deep as the RPG element that exists today. And puzzle games, although they were phenomenal, were limited, right? Because it was all two-dimensional. There was only so much you could put into a puzzle. The amount of different types of games that they exist today mean that there is literally something for everyone. And even more so, Mac, for guys like me and guys like you who have our favorite genres, it's very, very possible for us to branch out and say, hey, I've never played X genre, or I've never played game X in an IP. And I want to branch out and I want to play that. And I have a pretty good idea of if I'm going to like it or not, because there's a lot of information out there on it. And so that's the thing that I'm most grateful for, is being able to experience different journeys, being able to experience different types of games, even though I have my core favorites. I think that's one of the best parts of gaming right now. Yeah. And Mac, we're going to keep it pretty short today in terms of news, because there really isn't a lot. People aren't writing this week. We did get some announcements. We did get The Last of Us Part 2 that was announced. And so, we could have a conversation about, is it too soon and is it not too soon? But I really just think we should end this segment on the things that we're grateful for. Would love to hear from the rest of y'all what you're grateful for in terms of gaming, and that has been our news for the week.
Well, then, let's turn to the past, shall we? Mr. Nice Guy, we are entering the season. 'Tis the season, indeed, for us to really have all the games released. Just as a sort of, retrospective, it used to be that people would save up their releasing of a game until the holiday season so that they could sell more units. So many incredible games that have both been impactful for video games as a whole and as well as for us personally came out. Example, 1994, Donkey Kong Country. What about 1998, Ocarina of Time? What about 2003, Sands of Time? 2011, Skyward Sword? Mind-blowing games, and it's just like that. So, Mr. Nice Guy, when we get into the holiday season, gaming history is all about sort of like, oh man, what do we pick this time?
Can I ask you something real quick?
Absolutely.
Have you seen, I know you're not on Twitter and stuff like that as much as I am, or I guess it's called X now, but there's been this phase of people posting the old gaming newspapers, or rather the old Christmas newspapers for Toys R Us or Kmart, and showing what games were priced at back then. Have you seen any of those? It brings back so much nostalgia for me. I love it.
I have seen some of those, and actually some of the time. So, you can actually subscribe to pay to have access to old newspapers. And we've got an account. So sometimes when I'm doing research for this, I'll go and I'll check, like what was the New York Times saying this last week in like various years. And sometimes that'll lead to interesting topics. But yeah, I love looking at old newspapers and old newsprints, and I've seen a few of those advertisements that people post up on Twitter. It's real fun.
It's pretty cool to see, man. So much nostalgia. Anyway, please continue.
What I wanted to focus on today happened, obviously this week, but more specifically today. Back in the day. But Mr. Nice Guy, I have a question for you.
Please.
And as we're seeing so many things launching, as it were, so many games in history, as well as the occasional, say, video game console, Mr. Nice Guy,
yeah,
I want to know, what does the ideal console launch look like? And, you can say that like what it would look like back in the day, or even if the PlayStation, if Sony, for their PlayStation 6, gave you the reins and was just like, Mr. Nice Guy, you are in charge of the launch party, what kind of console launch party are you planning?
So you're not really, I just want to make sure I clarify, you're not really asking about a literal party. You're just curious, like, what I'd like to see from a game launch, correct?
Actually having a launch event, what would you do? What is console launch perfection for you?
It's a good question. So let's start in terms of the actual console. I want there to be enough inventory for anyone who would like to be able to purchase one to do so day one. And I get that that's such a thin line, because you don't want to have inventory sitting on shelves. You don't want to have excess. That's bad business, right? But the way that the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X launched was frustrating for many gamers. Now, granted, there were ship shortages, there was a pandemic, et cetera, et cetera. Regardless, I'd love for anyone who wants to be able to purchase a console and has the means to do so to be able to do so day one. The other thing for me is there has to be a game that is exclusive and fully shows the power of the console. Now, we could argue that Astro's Playroom did that for the PlayStation 5 at launch, and I wouldn't argue with that. It has some really cool features. It is an exclusive. It's not my thing. It's fun, but it's not something I'm going to sit around and play all day. But I'd love to see if each console generation, Nintendo, Xbox, Sony, have, The Last of Us or 3D Mario or a new Halo. Because then it opens up the door that we can see what that looks like day one, and we can see what it looks like in year 7 when the console's about to do its swan song and put the last stuff out. In terms of a party, just a ton of... there was an ant on my desk. Keeping it real with y'all. That's what I was slapping. I want some giveaways. I want some developers to be there. I want PlayStation or Xbox or Nintendo themed foods at the event. So, just little touches to make it unique. And then I want to do some really nice giveaways for people who maybe want the console, but for whatever reason probably can't afford it. I think that would be really cool. I think sometimes we take I know I'm being long-winded here, but I know sometimes we take for granted like how much these consoles cost. Gaming is a very, very expensive hobby, and I can only imagine what it would be like to be a kid who wants nothing more than to be able to play a PlayStation 5 with his or her friends and simply can't afford it. And they have to go to school every day, and they have to hear about how awesome it is, and they're like, oh, I'm still on the PlayStation 3, right? So I think being able to give back to some people in that situation would be great. That's it.
Fantastic, Mr. Nice Guy. Love it, love it. I'll just shout out to Spennis the Menace, who says similar lines: inventory, great first-party experience, good third-party work, games that show what's possible with the tech, very along similar lines. Well, Mr. Nice Guy, you've said inventory, killer exclusives to launch with, nice giveaways, the devs being present, themed foods. This sounds like an amazing party and I'd love to be there. But maybe, just maybe, we have the perfect example of your ultimate launch party today, November 21st, 2005. Imagine an empty military hangar on the edge of the Mojave Desert. This was the Xbox 360 0-hour launch. Invitation only to around 3,000 people, a good chunk of which was contest winners from not one, not two, but three separate viral, marketing campaigns. And by viral, we just mean sort of non-conventional
Sure.
marketing campaigns. But three separate marketing campaigns that involved conspiracy boards, fun internet things, augmented reality games, and everything that allowed certain people to secure invitations to this. At the event, free booze if you were, say, into that sort of thing, but also giveaways of free hoodies, branded hoodies, Xbox branded hoodies, and 360 memory cards. When the doors open, options to play all 22 of the launch titles on brand new Xbox 360s with the devs from those launch titles present at the event, walking around, answering questions, seeing how people were enjoying it. And even some people being able to play Halo 2 online with their friends from outside of the event while they were there. But perhaps, most importantly, Mr. Nice Guy, everyone who went to that event who had the means was able to purchase a 360
Amazing.
at the launch party.
Amazing.
They had enough for everybody. So, Mr. Nice Guy, it looks like we may very well have hit game launch perfection back in 2005. It sounds like it was a wild and exciting time. Techno music, again, being held at this weird, airplane hangar north of Los Angeles on the edge of the Mojave Desert. Wild. Not the place I necessarily would have selected, but at the same time, kind of the thing you might want. You don't want a bunch of celebrities showing up to the console launch. A console launch should be for the gamers, and it sounds like it might have been kind of the last of the launch events that was mostly geared toward the gamers. But Mr. Nice Guy, that is a short one, but that is what I wanted to talk about for history today. And I know that you did not look up the 0-hour launch for the Xbox 360 before you gave those answers, but wild to me how well that lined straight up.
Yeah, dude, that's unreal. And it's interesting. I won't even go into why it is interesting, but I will just say that is very interesting that was the experience. Well, cool. Moving on to Indie Game of the Week, a segment where we talk about a game that may deserve more attention and tell you whether or not it deserves your attention. And Mac, I'm excited to talk about this week's game, and I'm excited, more importantly, to hear your thoughts. This week's game is called Full Void, developed and published by Out of the Bit Limited. It is currently $11.99 on Steam as part of a sale. It's 20% off. Normal price is $14.99. This came out July 18th, 2023. Currently sitting at 94 reviews on Steam with a very positive rating. Here is the brief description on Steam. Full Void is a 2D cinematic puzzle platformer set in a dystopian future. A young teenager, scared and alone, must use all their skills to defeat a rogue AI that keeps mankind oppressed. Mac, I am not going to say anything else. I think there are some similarities between this and some other games. But what are your thoughts? What did you think of it?
Heavy on the pixel art. One of the things that I quite loved about it and wasn't really expecting was that it has a sort of side scroller type of feel to it, and then has that occasional extra dimension like you experience in Fez.
Yep.
Where you just sort of like whoop, and now you're into a different depth. And the first time that happened in that game, oh my gosh, it just hit me in the feels and was just fantastic. I have a lot of things to say about the game, but I'm a little bit hesitant because of spoilers. This is a heavily narrative-driven game, and unlike some titles that you could compare it to, such as Inside, it doesn't leave it doesn't leave a sort of murky or cloudy ending. You aren't left wondering what was going on or what it was about. It's made very clear, so it's hard to talk about some aspects of it without, giving the ending away.
Yeah, no, I get it. Shout out to the developer, Out of the Bit Limited, for providing us with 2 keys for review. Will not affect our opinions. Mac, I thought that this game, it reminded me of Lunark in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you felt the same way, but the ledge grabbing, the running, the jumping, the dystopian type of world. It wasn't a platformer in the sense of Super Mario Brothers, just to make it clear to the listener and to the viewer. It was a platformer in the sense of you're navigating a world. There are not power-ups. This isn't a magical, mushroom eating game, right? Like Super Mario Brothers, but it's very much more like Out of This World, Another World, Lunark, that type of thing. I liked this game a lot. And we didn't really get into our thoughts deep, but one thing you said when I asked you what you thought, you said it left you wanting more. I think I beat this game in about 2 hours, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. This is like when you're reading a book or watching a movie, and right when you reach the point where you're like, oh, this is really, really good, then it ends. And you're like, what? 2 hours? No, I want more. I thought this game was great. I don't really think I could give it high enough praise, and I really have very, very few complaints. The one complaint that I would say is I don't like dying in video games, and there were several points where you would die not because of your lack of skill, but just because the game wanted you to die to learn, almost like as part of a tutorial. Like you'd walk around a corner, and then something would happen, and you'd die. And you'd be like, oh, okay. And then it would rewind, right? It would start over. And you'd be like, okay, well, now I know that when I walk around this corner, I need to immediately jump, right? Or immediately grab this ledge or do something. And so I don't really like jump scare deaths. And so that was my only complaint.
One of the interesting things about a game where you have to die to learn what to do is that it tends to sort of let the air out, like you build up tension, and once you've had that death and you reset to the checkpoint, the tension really goes way down as compared to where it was where you were
yeah,
before.
Good point.
That's how I feel about it, but I can certainly echo your sentiment, but I think we might just be different people with respect to the rest of the audience, because clearly everybody likes it. And my biggest gripe about it is definitely that I don't have more of it. That's what it left me wanting more. I want more. Still well worth it for the for even the $14. Absolutely would do it again. But yeah, just give me more. Maybe a DLC, maybe.
And that was going to be my question is like if you were paying for this game, you think 14 was worth it, $14.99, and you obviously think it was.
Yeah.
Games like this, to me, they have so much charm and so much that goes into making a great story as opposed to a great game, that I never really questioned the price. And it's interesting, as I was playing this,
Yeah.
I was like, they could have gone a little bit higher with the price. I think that they were smart not to, simply because it is such a short game, and I don't feel like there's a ton of replayability. Would you agree or would you disagree with that aspect?
Yeah, I would say there's not a lot of replayability because there aren't any additional ways to solve the puzzles, really. And there's, yeah, and when you don't have multiple ways to do a thing, it doesn't really help to do it again unless you're the type of person that really, really, really wants to see how fast you can get it done beginning to end. But yeah, for those of us who aren't speedrunners, not much replayability.
Cool. So last thing I want, and I agree with you, last thing I wanted to say, we review a lot of games, and these games come and go. We play them, we move on to the next one, and I know that's the same for all of you. The people who make these games, I follow many of them on Twitter. They make a game, and they don't move on from it. They make more games, but they continue promoting their game. They continue tweeting about their game and saying, hey, we still have X number of wish lists on Steam. This game is 40% off, 20% off right now. If your wish list, please go buy it. Like, this is really their life. And so, as we move on from game to game to game, kind of like, that metaphor in Toy Story of kids moving on from toy to toy to toy and you forget your old toys, just remember the developers do not move on. And so please support these small developers, whether it's this game or another one. They really do depend on people purchasing and playing their games and tweeting about them and sharing them in order for them to be able to make the next great game. And this is one that I can recommend without reservation. Mac, that is our indie game of the week.
All right. Well, now we turn to a crowdfunding project that's trying to get off of the ground. Mr. Nice Guy, I have an interesting one for you. I'm posting a link in the chat, and we will talk about some of the virtues and the vices and say whether or not we think it should be kick-started or kicked out of here. This is Intersolar 83. It is a VR game about space travel, but retro future. So I love the retro future style of games. To put you in the right headspace, think Far Cry 3 Blood Dragon. That's retro future. BioShock is technically kind of a retro future, even though it's sort of 1950s. But and I guess Deathloop was a retro future dystopia, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was, for sure.
Think games similar to like that. This is space exploration as would have been imagined of the future in the 80s. They've got a $56,000 goal with 20 days left on the clock. The minimum buy-in for a digital copy is $18 or $22, depending upon whether or not you get that early bird backing status. And I should throw out there that it has a playable demo. However, it is VR, so I don't really have the setup to try that. So, just putting it out there for those of you who do. Anyway, so what you're doing in here is this is a space sim exploration game. You are exploring in your 1980s future style space setup, going to procedurally generated planets, landing on them, and a big deal about this is for you to feel like your spaceship is carrying you to places, that you're able to interact with all the various components, and to survive on the sort of final frontier of space, if you will. I'm sure that the final frontier for space has never been used by anyone before, but finding clues on crashed ships, discovering the mystery of what's going on in the in space, being able to fly around craft and to travel from the surface of one world to a completely different star without loading screens. At least these are some of the things that are being put out there as, what this game is aiming to bring to the forefront. Anything stand out to you about this?
Yeah, I'll be very, very candid here. It's hard for me, as much as I've been an advocate for VR in the past, to get behind a VR game. Especially a space exploration. When I think of space exploration, I immediately think No Man's Sky. There's another space exploration game, man, that's VR, and I'm going to find it before the end of this segment. But they just don't ever do it for me. And I think it's intriguing that one of the things it says in their trailer, which I just browsed as you were talking, is no load screens, which leads me to believe that either the world is just not very big or that it's just not very detailed. Because to truly have a space exploration game based on the limitations of hardware, you would need to have some type of loading screen to be able to get to the next place. So that kind of gives me pause. I'm not really interested in this. There's too many loose ends, I think.
Yeah, I'm very interested because it very much appeals to my aesthetic, what I like. I love that retro future style. And I also, growing up, I had books on the shelves about spaceships, about the inside of the Challenger shuttle, and with pictures and diagrams and all sorts of things. So the idea of being inside of a spaceship based on that type of thing. Also, I mentioned Star Trek a little bit earlier. Star Trek Enterprise, when that came out in the early 2000s, I kind of didn't really like the series, but one thing I loved about it was the set design and the costuming. And it felt like somebody took a submarine, a modern day nuclear submarine on one side, and the Starship Enterprise on the other, drew a line between them, and then found kind of that perfect midpoint of like submarine style, but applied to space in this weird, wild way. And it felt like earthy, And as I look at the renders and what's going on here, it feels rooted in that 80s retro future. And I'm instantly in love with the aesthetic. I wish I had the stuff to actually try to try out the demo, because I think it could be great. And I think it could hit all those things that I'm hoping for. But once again, I am thwarted by my lack of hardware.
Yeah, so that other game I was thinking of is called Elite Dangerous. And with space exploration games, I find that it kind of has to be your game. Like, I had Elite Dangerous on my wish list for a long time, but the more and more I would read about it, and it would be on sale for a good price. The more and more I'd read, the more and more I'd learn. It was so complex that it really needed to be like, okay, I'm off work, time to play Elite Dangerous, and not play any of the other games that I have. Like, that had to be the one game that you were into. And so I hesitate to really get excited about any space exploration game, because I feel like it's either going to be a demo, like a VR demo, or it's going to be your life. And so I just can't get behind this. Sorry.
I can certainly get behind this. I very much want to see Intersolar 83 succeed, and I say kickstart. Mr. Nice Guy, you say kick.
I say kick.
We don't always agree on these. I think this has a lot of promise, and even though it may or may not be our thing on Kick or Kickstart, regardless of that, we wish nothing but the best for the indie devs who have a dream and have passion and want to bring something here. Certainly won me over with at least what I've been able to see so far. I would love to see an option for non-VR, although it is a retro VR space sim. I get that's just not going to be a thing. but I hope that there are enough people with VR sets who get excited about this, that fund this and make it happen. It's a niche community that is being targeted here, and there's just no real way of getting around that, I don't think. I wish there was, but as is, we wish you the best on Intersolar 83.
Well, it's time for Nerdflex.
Oh, woohoo.
My singing was on point right there. A segment where you, the viewers, try to stump the hosts. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. For those of you who may be here for the first time live, appreciate you. And the way this segment works, you give us multiple choice gaming-related questions. Mac and I use nothing but our noggins to try to answer those questions. No Google, no cheating, no phone a friend, none of that. We just use our gaming knowledge and logic to try to figure it out. So if you're here live and you have a question, please get it in the chat, multiple choice, gaming related. And in the meantime, we also have a test bank of questions that we use as a backup when people are being shy or for whatever reason. Here is the first question. And these ones in the test bank, not multiple choice, we can use different answers. This is a tough one. It's a Sonic question. In which UK theme park is there a Sonic Spinball ride? In which UK theme park is there a Sonic Spinball ride? Now, just so people know how this works, we have I don't know how many questions are in this test bank, maybe 500, maybe 1,000, a large number. And I literally click the random button, it goes to a question, and that's the one we try. So, Mac, what do you think?
I don't even know what kinds of amusement parks are in the UK, much less which one would have Sonic Spinball. But I'm gonna say, is there a UK version of Disneyland?
I don't think so. And I don't think Disneyland would have Sonic Spinball. But I could be wrong, because there's Super Nintendo World, which I believe is tied to Disney. I'm going to go, I legit don't even know what theme parks are in the UK. Is Six Flags in the UK? I'm going to go Six Flags UK.
And you know what? I'm going to say Sega World UK.
Sega. All right, let's just see what the answer is on this. Okay, it's one I've never heard of. It's called Alton Towers. Okay. Apparently that's a theme park.
Towers.
Alton Towers. Apparently that's a theme park in the UK.
Hey, that's good on them for having
We
that.
learned something new today.
Now I kind of want to know what the Spinball ride looks like. Is it just like a tilt-a-whirl or something? I don't know, but I'll look it up later. But now we know where to look.
We have tough questions today. People are not being brave in the chat, and that's totally okay. With questions, Mac, here's the second question from the test bank. Square Enix question. I'm going to need to lean on you for this. What puzzle platform features John Delancey, better known as Star Trek's Q? Which puzzle platformer features John Delancey, better known as Star Trek's Q?
Yeah, so Square Enix. I don't know that many Square Enix games. I do know a few. And I can't think of any puzzle platformers that are done by Square Enix, much less ones that feature John Delancey. But
this is one of those episodes where it's less about us showing how smart we are and more about education, because I don't know the answer either.
Well, I'm just gonna say something like Puyo Puyo Paradise or something like that.
Okay, and I have no idea, so I'm just gonna flip it. I'm gonna go with Tetris Square Enix Unlicensed Edition. Nope, the answer is Quantum Conundrum, which I am not familiar with at all. But apparently he was in that game.
That Quantum Conundrum, this is the first I remember ever hearing of that title, although I'm sure it's a beloved and great one. So don't come at us, Quantum Conundrum stands.
Well, hey, last question. This is also from the test bank. It's a Nintendo question. Mac, who sang I'm like Mario on mushrooms, I'm like Popeye on some spinach? These are tough questions.
Absolutely
today.
no idea.
These are tough questions. Seems like some drug references, for sure. I'm like Mario on mushrooms. I'm like.
Do you think it could be Ice-T? because I know that he had he had a lyric that included Mario at one point in time.
Eminem did. There was a question like, who said you don't get another chance? Life is a Nintendo game, and you guys
Yeah.
both were unsure, but it was Eminem. Now I don't think this is Eminem, but we can go. You can go Ice-T if you want. Are you thinking Ice-T or Vanilla Ice?
I was thinking iced tea. I definitely wasn't thinking Vanilla Ice.
I just want to make sure you know the difference. I'm just trying to help you out.
Look, I know who Vanilla Ice is, and as hip as he would like to think he is, he's nowhere near hip enough for these kind of lyrics. It's not. I'm saying it right now. These lyrics are too good for Vanilla Ice.
Well, I am gonna go the rap route, except this really doesn't rhyme, so it's kind of a weird lyric. I'm gonna go with Logic. I don't think it's him,
Okay.
but I'm gonna go with Logic just for fun. Let's see who it was. I have no idea who this person is. Tiny Tempa, TINIE space TEMPAH. I gotta Google this person because I have no idea who they are.
Turns out they wrote exactly one song.
Dude, no, he's a rapper born in 88.
Uh-huh.
1988. And maybe I'm just not cool anymore. I don't know who this is.
Oh, Mr. Nice Guy, you know, we're getting old there, and now we don't know the rappers that were born in '88. So, guess we got to turn in our rap cards now.
Yeah, hey, that's been Nerdflex.
Well, now we turn to a little bit of legalese. If you thought that last question made us look lame, wait until you hear this, because I am no lawyer. I just play one on this podcast, and we have a little bit less of a dive into legal filings as we would, because we've kind of already been here, or at least where we're going to talk about, in the case of Epic v. Google, which is in full swing. With Tim Sweeney of Epic testifying yesterday on the stand. Now, we've talked about Epic's various legal challenges in episodes 136, 153, 156, 178, 181. I could go on, and 248. But you get the idea. But those cases were mostly about Epic's lawsuit against Apple. So as a brief recap, as if you don't remember it from it dominating the news for quite some time, there was an issue. Epic wasn't going to take it anymore of giving Apple and Google their cut of the money for the V-Bucks that were sold on their platforms. And so several months, and I do mean several months, maybe as many as years, before deciding that they were no longer going to honor the terms of their contracts with Apple and Google, there were some very specific provisions of Epic's contract that they decided they were going to thumb their nose at. And one of them was the line in their contract of, you can't deliberately hide code from us when you update your games on your platform. This is usually meant to be a sort of thing that allows them to completely kick from their platform if they figure out that you are inserting malware or things like that. They're like, you have to clearly communicate with us what's going on in your code. So several months before they enacted this plan to stop giving Apple and Google their cuts under the guise of it being a power to the players sort of thing, they started pushing updates hiding snippets of code. So when they finally launched their, hey, we're not going to pay you the money we agreed to pay you anymore, then Apple and Google terminated their contracts and booted them from their platforms, and then it stayed while the lawsuit was pending, which is why you can still get them, because the idea is you maintain the status quo while the lawsuit is going on. So that's why we, as gamers, have been hearing a lot about this, but haven't really seen all that much movement, because the status quo remains while these things are being decided. Now, there's a lot more to this story. But I bring this up because the 10 causes of action or grievances that were brought against Apple by Epic in the previous case are roughly identical to the ones that they are bringing against Google, based, as they all are, on the arguments of monopoly power. And to be clear, Epic is not your friend. It's not my friend. Apple's not our friend. Google's not our friend. This is, it's hard to want to root for any side here. And we should be really having conversations about monopoly power and whether or not, or even how close to monopoly power or oligopoly power or anything like that we're okay with. And these should be conversations that we as video gamers, as game players, and as well as, game makers should really be having. But if the 10 arguments, the 10 causes of action, which they lost 9 out of 10 against Apple, last time we checked, that's on appeal, of course. But if those did not hold sway in the case, when Apple is, by all measures, way more close to a monopoly on that spectrum than Google, then it's highly unlikely that this is really going to hold that much sway in this legal fight against Google. I could totally be wrong. Absolutely could be wrong. Who knows? This is why we're not going through the trouble of reading all those 10 or whatever, because we already did that, Mr. Nice Guy.
That's right.
But it is good to know that that Epic v. Google is ongoing. It is at the point now where we're going to start hearing some more of those arguments. And if we do find something that is new enough about it, I'll definitely be updating you on that. But at this point, it's kind of same stuff, different day so far. But that's what we had for Legalese for you today.
Love it. Ladies and gentlemen, that has been our show. We're wishing you all a happy Thanksgiving, but if you celebrate. But before we go, we have one last segment called What We've Been Watching and What We've Been Playing, where we talk about just that, the cool, nerdy stuff we're into across all platforms, streaming services, and physical media. And if you're here live, you have a job to do, let us know what you've been watching and playing. Mac, what you been into the past week?
Well, I have been playing another game that we're going to talk about next week. I was also, of course, playing Full Void. It kept me company on the train. I also picked up I played some more Subnautica over the past few days, and, just some really good chill experiences, no monsters at all coming to hunt me from the briny depths. But that's what I've been playing. As for watching, my spouse and I have gotten into Taskmaster. It's a British panel show where they have almost exclusively British comedians on, and they have various tasks that they have to do. Some of them can be like really subjective, like make the most, you've got 10 minutes to order supplies and then 10 minutes to make the biggest splat. Or just sorts of like weird things. And it's fun to see, to see comedians do this and struggle with like, okay, so what exactly are you asking? And all the sorts of fun banter that comes as a result of it. And it's really a fun show. I encourage you to, it's easy watching, frankly, so I encourage you to have a go. Put it on in these cold weather months and chill under a blanket. But yeah, that's most of what I've been watching. What about you, Mr. Nice Guy?
You know what, Mac? I just saw a phenomenal movie this weekend. I saw the new Hunger Games, and I thought it was awesome. I'll just leave it at that. If you haven't heard about it, go Google the trailer. And if you like the Hunger Games, I think you will probably like this movie, which is a prequel. What else? Oh, my wife and I have gotten back into a show that for whatever reason didn't click with me when we tried to watch it before, but I'm really loving it now, and that's Leverage. Have you heard of this show, Mac?
I have heard of the show, and they've got a new one. I watched the whole first run. I haven't gotten into the reboot, though.
Yeah, Leverage is great, and I wouldn't say I didn't like it before. I just think I had too many shows when we tried to watch it maybe a year or 2 years ago. And so I love those like Ocean's 11, Italian Job, groups of criminals getting together and stealing from the rich and giving to the poor, right?
Mhm.
And of course, there's some self-interest there, but great show. I'm really enjoying that. And as far as playing, I've obviously been playing that game you just mentioned that we'll talk about next week. I played through Full Void, and I am really, really, really loving Sea of Stars. Those are the games that I'm playing right now. And Mac, what are people into in the chat?
Well, I'll do some playing first. I see Alex Man with some Super Mario RPG and Galaxy 2 and Super Mario Galaxy 2, The Oregon Trail, the 2022 release, Splatoon 3, Black Mesa, Half-Life 2, and Half-Life 2 Episodes 1 and 2. Excellent choices, all. Galvatron's been playing some Spider-Man 2, some Super Mario Bros. Wonder, Eastern Exorcist, Hogwarts Legacy, Street Fighter 6, and Diablo 4. Very cool. You'll have to tell us how Diablo 4 is treating you. As for watching, I just see Galvatron with Blue Eye Samurai, which he's not enjoying. Onimusha, Invincible Season 2. Gotta get onto that one.
Oh, I've been watching that
too. The Hateful Eight. Oh, awesome. And The Equalizer 3 and Killers of the Flower Moon. Nice guy, how are you liking Incredible Season 2? Invincible Season 2.
It's good. And it's funny. I think I said this a few episodes ago. I have the Invincible Compendium 1 on my nightstand, and I've been reading a few pages of it, but I'd rather watch the show at this point. It's a heavy book. But Mac, why don't you take us home, sir?
Thank you, everybody, for coming out to the show. Thank you for being here, for making episode 289 what it has been here with us. For those of you who are listening after the fact, thanks. You're awesome. Be sure to leave a review wherever you can for us. It helps new people find us and, become nerds all together. You can find us, twitch.tv/2nerdsinapod, 7 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Central, most every Tuesday. Come on out, hang out, get nerdy with us, be excellent to each other, and we'll see you next time.
Deuces.